How did Kel'thuzad become a necromancer? What were the exact events detailing his fall from the Kirin Tor to the rise amongst the ranks of the damned? This video will go over a short story explaining these events, which was published by Blizzard around the time of the release of OG Naxxramas. Lore-wise, however, this story is taking place sometime after the Second War, but before the events of the Third War. So, during this time, the Kirin Tor began to notice that Kel'thuzad was strangely vanishing for prolonged periods of time. Where he was going during these periods was to his warehouses in Northrend, which he had transformed into laboratories to house his necromantic experiments. Upon discovering this, the lead magi of the Kirin Tor were disgusted. When Antonidas showed the magi a box containing a group of decaying rats which Kel'thuzad had raised into undeath, everyone in the room was appalled. Even Kel'thuzad and Jaina, who were also present in the room. The Magi began stating that the Kirin Tor was beginning to be rumored among the villagers as evil and untrustworthy. The relationship between magic wielders and those who did not wield magic was already on shaky ground, so to discover this would invite anarchy, and should they find out what Kel'thuzad had been up to, it might incite a civil war within Lordaeron. At this, Kel'thuzad offered to be more discreet, but the other Magi would not listen to him. "You mistake our purpose here today. At this moment, your properties are being thoroughly searched. All items tainted by dark magic will be confiscated, and once identified to our satisfaction, destroyed." Kel'thuzad had already known that this would happen. The mysterious voice within his head, the unknown ally who had been whispering to him, predicted this. "In the light of the evidence, King Tyrannus has agreed with our judgment. If you do not abandon this madness, you will be stripped of rank and holdings, and will be exiled from all of Lordaeron." Not entirely shocked, Kel'thuzad bowed to his peers and left. Sometime later, Kel'thuzad begins walking the frozen continent of Northrend. However, he was shivering uncontrollably, and his body was on the verge of shutting down. In an effort to find shelter, his eyes came across a strange structure which was guarded by creatures that resembled spiders. As he began walking into the citadel, an enormous and grotesque being lumbered into view. Anub'arak. But the enormous being did not seek to cause harm to Kel'thuzad. He sought to aid him. After stating that the incredibly skilled necromancer that Kel'thuzad was searching for was in fact Anub'arak's current master, the mage agreed to allow the creature into guiding him through a series of tunnel networks which ultimately led the both of them to an awe-inspiring structure, Naxxramas. As they made their way into the structure, Anub'arak guided Kel'thuzad through the ziggurat's many wings. As the tour continued, Anub'arak told Kel'thuzad of the War of the Spider, the war in which the Master crippled the Nerubian kingdom and raised its people into eternal servitude. In return for immortality, you agreed to serve him. Remarkable. Agreed implies choice. As they made their way further into Naxxramas, they came across a man and woman who were being caged. The two were married, and the man was healthy. However, the woman was very ill. Her eyes were glassy, and she was clearly dying. But upon seeing Kel'thuzad, her eyes lit up, and she asked him, she begged him, to quickly kill her with a simple spell. Kel'thuzad uneasily looked away. "For pity's sake, if you will not aid me, at least take my husband to safety." The man comforted her and stated that he would never leave her. "Make her be quiet," Kel'thuzad whispered to Anub'arak, and as soon as the words left his lips, the Crypt Lord speared the woman through the heart, ending her life. Her husband let out a yell of pain and anguish, but barely a few seconds after she fell to the ground, she began rising up. "My love?" The risen form of his wife looked at him and shivered. She then told him to not come any closer. The man, however, ignored her words and walked towards her. She then pushed her husband away from her with such force that it sent him flying against the bars of the cage. "Stay back," she growled. "Hurt you. Hurt you." Her words first came out as a whine and as pained, but then the last utterance of the words turned violent. Horrified, Kel'thuzad watched as the woman lifted fingers into the hole of her chest and soaked them in her own blood. She then licked them. She then pounced on her husband and began devouring him. Kel'thuzad could not stop the horror. He closed his eyes, but he could still hear the unspeakable sounds of bone breaking, the man screaming, and blood spilling. Sickened and horrified, the mage teleported himself away from Naxxramas and threw up. What had he gotten himself into? What had he just seen? Before he could piece together the information, a group of wraiths surrounded him. They asked him if he had second thoughts. If he did, where would he go? Who would believe him? Kel'thuzad had no choice. He could fight them, but death would be pointless. He would still serve the Master in the afterlife. Instead, if he willingly agreed to serve the Master, he would bolster his skills, strengthen his abilities, and in time, he could surpass the Necromancer and be his own master. Take me to him. The wraiths teleported him into a cavern with an icy spire, and what appeared to be a throne on top of the spire. The cavern was even colder than the frozen surface of Northrend itself. The freezing air froze his muscles, making him lag behind the wraiths. The wind within the cavern pushed him the opposite way of which he moved. Finally, Kel'thuzad was fatigued. "Give me a moment," he managed to say in between bouts of heavy breathing. "We cannot rest. Why should you?" With no choice, the mage forced himself to climb the icy spire. As he neared the top, the air became colder, the wind stronger, and a storm of hail bombarded him without mercy. The wind, and something more. A pressure of incredible hatred and might began to push him towards the earth, bending his spine, and soon he was forced onto his hands and knees. The voice of the Master echoed, "Let this be your first lesson. I have no love for you or your people. On the contrary, I intend to scour humanity from this planet, and make no mistake, I have the power to do it." How wrong Kel'thuzad had been. How terrible a fate his thirst for knowledge will now bring upon him. He was consumed by fear. "You will never catch me unaware, for I do not sleep. I can read your thoughts as easily as you may read a book. You cannot hope to defeat me. Immortality can be a great boon. It can also be agony, the likes of which you have never yet begun to fathom. Defy me, and I will teach you what I have learned of pain. You will beg for death." The words Kel'thuzad had thought earlier had also been heard by the Master. Kel'thuzad truly had no choice. He could either choose to defy this being and be tortured for an eternity, even in a state beyond death, or he could choose to serve it. Kel'thuzad began sobbing, began whimpering and crying and begging for the Master to stop the overwhelming pressure which pinned him into the ground. The pressure lifted, and Kel'thuzad looked into the set of armor encased into the ice. With every second, he felt hope draining, life escaping, and his sanity vanishing. Here was despair. Here was the Lich King. "I am yours. I swear it."